Okay, we are rolling. And again, I am Daniel Benning from Biotics Research. As I said a couple times, but for those of you new hopping in, there is the chat box. Jacqueline, my assistant here, sitting right over here, will be watching the chat box for any major technological concerns, because sometimes we've had it. Just last week, we had a sales meeting and our presenter thought he was presenting for 30 minutes and we didn't hear a word he said. So we'll keep that rolling. Be aware, I'm muting all of you, and I can unmute you if you have a particular question later on. Also, at the end of this presentation, I'm doing a raffle. So if you hang out for the whole time, there's going to be a raffle through the chat box for an offering of some products. Okay. All right. So Daniel's Downloads, my monthly show here. And I appreciate you all being here and taking the opportunity to sign up and be a part of this. Today's talk, we're going to talk about inflammation and the immune system. So how is inflammation affecting immunity? You know, we've obviously had a big immune thing going on, and I'm not allowed to say exactly what, but you know, many of us approached it from what's for the immune system, vitamin D, vitamin A, you know, vitamin C, zinc, and things of that nature. I'm taking you a different way because we're looking at the chronicity of viruses, and this is just one approach. And again, I feel so grateful to many of you. I was talking to Dr. McCrosty before we all got on, and you know, he was essential for me in my early days of learning and sharing different viral programs and things to do. But what I'm going to share with you today, short and sweet, is a program that we've seen very effective for that chronic viral person. And so I'm trying to bring these down. There we go. The admit box is hidden behind my presentation. So, but I want to talk to you, and I love sharing this first slide. And I've shared this at many presentations, but this is how important, you know, what we've seen in the chronic viral and the active viral situations. Look at this slide. This came from Dr. Alex Vazquez years ago. He sent this to me. A single meal of egg and sausage muffin sandwich with 2 hash browns caused an increase of 150% of NF-kappa B. NF-kappa B is your inflammatory enzyme in every cell. That's what the Vioxx and the Bextras of the world were trying to inhibit, was that inflammatory enzyme. So it's not published here, but we can picture that Golden Arches meal, the single meal of egg and sausage muffin and 2 hash browns. You see those people in line when you go to work getting their breakfast. But look what happened just from one meal. That 150% increase in NF-kappa B, which lasted for approximately 2 hours and was associated with an increase in oxidative stress and even the inflammatory marker C-reactive protein in a blood test. It was noticeable in a blood test from one meal. Now, how do people eat throughout the day? Or maybe they just do that for breakfast and maybe clean up their diet. But what's that lifestyle like? This, as we talked about, chronic viral stuff is a lifestyle disease. So be aware of this. This was a great one. I have a lot of my clients take this slide, print this slide, and show their patients. Here's one breakfast that you're eating. Look what it's doing to your body. So yes, this is a reality. I took this picture years ago at Walmart, and this is the frozen food section, deep fried Twinkies. And they actually have chocolate if you're more of a chocolate fan. But this is, you know, we live in a world, maybe in a little bit of a bubble sometimes, because we think we eat well, that we're making healthy choices. But are our customers, our patients, our clients, are they eating well? Yeah. Come on. I mean, even at Whole Foods, when you see people walking down the aisle with the grocery cart, I can look in, maybe I'm a little judgmental. I'm not a purist. Many of you know that, but you see what goes in that. And Whole Foods is a lot of carb laden foods as well. But Hostess deep fried Twinkies, that's the vanilla. They do make the chocolate flavor, but that is constant inflammation. And this is something we're offering our kids. So that's what's scary. One of my favorite charts And again, I give credit always where credit is due. This is Dr. Alex Vasquez's chart. And by the way, Alex just moved from Barcelona back to the United States. So I'm looking at bringing him in as a lecturer. That's very exciting. I have that conference call tomorrow. He will be at EPIC, which we've talked about in North Carolina in May, which I will be at. So part of our next talk will be silver bullets from EPIC. But this is another chart I have a lot of my practitioners laminate. And you'll see, here's your diet and lifestyle choices over here. Stress, radiation, oxidative stress, injury. But look at food and environmental allergens, viral infections, and then consumption of poor fats, nutrient poor diet. All activate NF-kappa B. And if you see at the top of that chart, the products that Dr. Vasquez plugged in. But here's your inflammation, your inflammatory cytokine pathways, which then leads to the right side of that chart, the clinical manifestations of pain, inflammation, and poor health. Mostly based on lifestyle choices. At the bottom, you see here vitamin D deficiency. You all know that's very rampant. You know, it's Biotics' #1 product globally is our vitamin D. But all those things activate NF-kappa B. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today is how can we reduce that cytokine storm you heard so much about these past few years. I wanted to do a little segue before I dive into that pathway, because I was making my presentation and I saw this slide and I thought, gosh, this is such a good one to share because many of you know about ADP, anti-dysbiosis product, right? And so it's emulsified, small particle, sustained release, slow release with celery fiber, oil of oregano. Straight oil of oregano in a gel cap. We know, we did the research. When I first came to Biotics, it was Bob Ronzio did a lecture on this. And he showed that straight oregano oil burns the villi of the GI, irritates it, actually causing a problem. This, when you emulsify, you're also getting lymphatic uptake. In the GI, you're getting uptake to go systemic. But you think of it as antimicrobial, antifungal, antiparasitic. But then let me share this with you. Antiviral activity of Mexican oregano. So this came to me by one of our reps in the Northwest. And popping somebody in here, there we go. And so ADP covers so many bases. Years ago, doctors' data, when you would do a stool test, tested our ADP against parasites. The German literature with oil of oregano is huge as an antiparasitic. You know, I've used it, and in my notes, I talk about take a tablet of ADP, put it in a glass of water. The tablet will not dissolve very fast. Remember, it's a slow release tablet, but the oil will release into the water. Gargle with that for sore throats. Knock it right out. Gargle with that through several times throughout the day. You can drink the water or you can spit it out, but just set a glass on your counter with a tablet of ADP in it and let that oil release throughout the day and gargle with it. I do know people, this is not for me, who take a tablet under their cheek and gum and kind of suck on an oil of oregano. That is potent. But you're aware of ADP as a strong antibacterial, fungal, parasitic, but now we show antiviral activity. Okay, so let's start diving into the more of the chronicity cases that I've worked with that we see. And if you're not familiar with cytosine thymus, it's a non-hormone secreting glandular. So this is one of our really home run glandular products. Why I like it is because it is non-hormone secreting. So it's safe for the use of kids and infants. This is something I used for my son when he was small. I grind it up. My old mentor, Dr. Idenier, would say, grind it up, put it on a toothpick and just get it in his mouth, you know, because at that time he was doing some daycare or whatever it was and being exposed. And so we showed that our thymus, we did a study on our thymus was 2 times more active than our competitors. So, and I'll show you why. But this story on thymus goes back 30 years for me when I came out of college and I was working with Dr. J. Allen Robertson, as I mentioned many times his name because he's a dear mentor of mine. And he's the one that really, as I came out with my biochemistry nutrition degree, really taught me the application of nutritional supplements and the effects of that. We used to mix and hook IVs all day long, but we had a massive inventory. And Jim Emke, who I think might be listening today, my old boss from 30 years ago, welcome, Jim. You got me here. Dr. Robertson, if people were going to opt for an injection, he would have them take thymus 2 weeks prior to and 2 weeks post to build up the immune system in these young kids. That's the first silver bullet I learned about biotics products before I ever knew about biotics research products, was thymus. Now, you may be asking, what's the dose? You know, for a child, a young child, a couple a day, you know, but in adults, in chronic cases like we're going to discuss, that chronic EBV, that chronic CMV, and other chronic viruses, I would look at least three times a day as a minimum. Some of you go much higher, I know that, but as a patient compliance standpoint, three times a day is really effective. But let me show you what's different about ours. Ours is neonatal tissue on the left here. See how tight and clean that is? On the right is adult tissue. We call these white spots basically lipofuscin or fatty deposits, deposits of toxicity, not clean at all. So newborn animals possess very active thymus glands. This is where we're going, okay? This is why ours is neonatal tissue, young tissue, because it's active. As we age, adult thymuses atrophy. So the function of, they function to program a vast number of T lymphocytes and produce high amounts of thymic factors and hormones. Neonatal thymus from newborn cows possesses abundant cortical tissue, where, look at, research indicates the thymus gland undergoes extensive hypertrophy with aging. So I'm not here to badmouth anybody. I won't name companies. That's not how I operate. But I do want to be, I've been doing this for so long, I get a little frustrated at the misinformation out there. And this is our place to have these conversations. Adult tissue that many of the companies supply, you're looking at it, it's not as active. It's not as clean, you know, and as we've experienced during this time of supply issues, it's actually one of our tougher nutrients to get is thymus. So let's be real. When it's in stock, buy it up. It's in my house as a home remedy product. But this is a wonderful, I'll share with you, there's some Hollywood celebrities that had hepatitis. This is what they took, okay? And this is what got them through their hepatitis. I have that from my dear source, my mentor, and their names and the results. But I wanted to prove to you that it actually works, because then you say, well, okay, Daniel, here's another supplement, you know, does it actually function? So here's a couple studies I wanted to show you that I dug up in my old archives. But children with food allergies given thymus for 6 months experienced improved food tolerance. It's an immunity component. You know, some of you listening in today have been mentors of mine. Dr. Mark Force, I've told you times about him. You know, he said when you have a lot of food allergies in a food allergy panel, it's not necessarily a potential food allergy. It's a gut issue. It's an immunity issue. So thymus works very well there. And then again, look at this from an immune standpoint. George Washington University Medical Center, thymic fractions capable of restoring some aspects of decreased immunity in AIDS patients. So here's the interesting thing. I know some of the schools out there are saying don't use glandulars. I have books in this closet over here that are older than anybody listening in and older than the students at these schools that talk about the use of glandular therapy. And we could do a whole presentation on it, but people think, well, your body digests and it's a large protein that can't cross the gut lumen. Let me share this with you. The studies are there that when you put a radioactive isotope on a thymus tissue, on an adrenal tissue, on a thyroid tissue, it gets across the GI intact that large protein, and gets to the tissue it's supposed to go to. So the adrenal shows up in the adrenal. So we know it's hitting the target cell. We could talk another hour about the beauty, the innate beauty of the GI to function, because we're going to talk about enzymes and how does a large enzyme that should have been digested cross the gut lumen. So let's dive into I shouldn't say I don't own anything here. Let's talk about a protocol that I've had great success with. It's a very simple protocol. One of them is thymus, but here's the 2 silver bullets I'm sharing with you today. Okay. And these 2 silver bullets I have had constant clinical feedback on. You know, I cover a large territory, Arizona and New Mexico. I'm very blessed to hear from all of you all of the time. You know, you can blow up my cell phone via text, whatever. So we have Caparest, all right? And we knew Caparest as a pain formula developed by Dr. Alex Vasquez, right? And so the ingredients have documented activity reducing NF-kappa B. Remember we showed you that pain chart inhibiting NF-kappa B initially? You won't have that cascade of the inflammatory cytokines. The dose, a little aggressive here, that's a loading dose, 4 to 5 BID twice a day, acutely as a loading dose, then 2 to 3 BID maintenance. Look at the maintenance dose here. That's what I'm looking for in my chronic viral cases. So let's say I've talked to a lot of you out there about chronic Epstein-Barr. We do the IVs, we do hydrogen peroxide IVs, we do ozone, we do IV, UVBI, I'm sorry, ultraviolet blood irradiation, and then all the supplements. But we haven't done this because you have all these nutrients in here, in that product that reduce NF-kappa B. Check out this slide right here. NF-kappa B inhibition, let's repeat that because I stumbled. NF-kappa B inhibition blocks viral replication. Again, blocks viral replication. This slide was a webinar that Dr. Vasquez did, I'm going to guess 7 or so years ago, that I saved in my computer. 7 years ago, he did an antiviral webinar. And this was the keynote I got out of it, is when we are inhibiting inflammatory cytokines, we're also going to inhibit viral replication. So think of your chronic EBV patient. You want to bring down that viral load, that viral titer. Your CMV patient, you want to bring down that viral load, that viral titer, or whatever other virus they're fighting. This is, I can say this without the other word, a long hauler protocol. The people that are struggling post-viral infection, this is an absolute place to go. Caparest, 2 to 3 BID. This is your, gosh, I've done everything for your EBV, your CMV patients, or this is my, gosh, I really struggled with this new virus and I'm not recovering. I was in Tucson at the Environmental Health Symposium. When were we there? A couple of weeks ago? Yeah, Jackie and I were down there a couple of weeks ago. And one of my doctors walked up to me after I gave him this protocol for personal use. He walked up to me and said, Daniel, my brain cleared after I got on this. Because what? We're causing inflammation in the brain as well. Let me share with you a quality control thing. I maybe have done this for some of you before, I know I have, but I have to share this with you because this is what's going on in the industry. This is the truth. So when in the Caparest, we have curcumin from turmeric, right? That's where curcumin comes from. And it's done as an extraction process. And you use a class 1 solvent to do the extraction, okay? That's a cancer-causing solvent. The USP allowable limit left of that solvent in that product is 5 parts per million. Here's the solvent right here. You see the spike, okay? We, at Biotics Research, in our massive laboratory, if you've seen it, you know how beautiful it is. If you haven't, trust me on it, I was just there. And I got to see our brand new facility. We just went another 90,000 square feet to keep up with demand and production. But we look for that solvent. So we never trust the certificate of analysis from the supplier because we find these kind of mistakes. This is what happens. So you get a C of A from a supplier, it always goes into our laboratory. Not every company is doing that. They just trust the certificate of analysis on that batch. Every batch we bring in the door, no matter how long we've used our suppliers, goes to our laboratory. Partially why at times of late, there's been a little holdup is because of that, of getting the product, getting it into the laboratory. Because you don't want to know what? Laboratory reagents were tough to find too. But what are we finding? Look what we found, 139 parts per million of that solvent. Decision, fail. We reject that material, we send it back. Who's buying that material, trusting the certificate of analysis? Here you have a product that people are using, curcumin, anti-inflammatory, anti-neoplastic, but now we're giving a ingredient at 139 parts per million of that cancer-causing solvent. Just a little side note to think about as when you purchase from your suppliers. I don't want to come off as the be-all end-all. There's a lot of good companies, but this is for your education, for when your patients say, oh my gosh, I got it so cheap at Costco. Or, oh my gosh, I went to this GNC and got it so cheap. Cheap is the word. All right. Let's dive into Intenzyme. So here's my two products for you, Cap Arrest and Intenzyme for these difficult, long, hanging on viruses. So if you're not familiar with Intenzyme, probably the first product I ever became familiar with biotics research, because we did a lot of cancer therapy in Wisconsin. And many of you are familiar with Dr. Kelly's work on enzymes and cancer, but that's not what we're going to talk about today, but we are going to talk about Intenzyme for sure. A totally, absolutely underutilized product. Now, it is not designed as a digestive enzyme, even though it is enzymes. It is designed to take away from meals to go systemic to break up inflammation. So here's your slide on what's in it: pancreatin, bromelain, lipase, amylase, papain. Okay, effective for systemic inflammation. I'm going to show you two studies on that just to prove that, again, these large proteins can cross the GI, because we think that's just going to get digested. Let me show you. And by the way, there is research that your own pancreatic enzymes are recirculated. So we can use it for systemic inflammation, tissue damage, arthritis, food sensitivities, poor circulation due to inflammation and atherosclerosis. I took it out of here, but a diabetic toe that was going to be taken off, saved by Intenzyme. And I might have mentioned that before. I have pictures of it pre and post in like 4 days. A diabetic toe that was going to be amputated, but we put on so much Intenzyme. Yes, he had diarrhea, but he saved his toe. But that was in only 4 days. Great. So a little piece to remember, and this comes from my good buddy. If you haven't listened to him speak, he's brilliant. Scary, brilliant guy. He's way too young to be that smart. Brett Wisniewski up in Colorado. I had him in Santa Fe for a lecture. I just was texting him yesterday. He may be coming to Arizona as well. pH and enzymes. Most enzymes will function best at a slightly alkaline pH. So here's your reason for nitrogreens, very alkaline, or multi-mins, which we use a lot here in Arizona because of the heat, to alkalinize the system systemically. Think differently. pH of the stomach, acid. We need pH systemically, slightly alkaline. Enzyme activity functions best there. We've had a lot of happening with receptors, hormone receptor sites with Dr. Lindsay Berkson. Same thought. Enzymes and pH work better. You know this. All disease loves acidity. Alkalinity, you feel better. Acidity, fatigue. Acidity, muscle aches. Acidity, disease. Drinking nitrogreens on a daily basis, I know Jackie and her son do every day, pretty much. The recipe is, what is it? 2 packets of stevia. Sweeten it up a little bit for Anthony. This is her football player. Anthony, here's a 16-year-old, grows fast on us, who is an athlete, a type 1 diabetic athlete, who functions top notch because he does these programs. But he does nitrogreens and he likes it. So it's 2 packets of stevia, a mason jar of ice, a full squeeze of a lemon, right? Both sides of lemons, full lemon, and water, shakes that up. Perfect refreshment. Perfect refreshment. But look at enzyme indications, sinus infections, inflammation. I can't talk about that too much, the C word, autoimmunity. There is research on all of this, but look at this one, viral infections. I'll share a little thought, and I don't have the scientific studies on it, but I do have a brilliant scientist who called me on it, who's been in this industry forever. And he goes, Daniel, think about this. You have a spike protein. What does Intenzyme go inside and do systemically? It digests foreign proteins. That's one pathway. I'll show you a few others here, but put that in there as, remember, my post long hauler protocol, the cap arrest and the Intenzyme. Here it is. This just came to me yesterday by that brilliant guy that told me about the spike protein enzymes. Look at what he found for me. Just sent this to me yesterday. Bromelain, a potential therapeutic application in infected patients. You see the slide. You see what we're talking about. Here's the pathway, which is even really cool. Here it is. Look at where bromelain, where enzymes are coming in. Inhibiting the pro-inflammatory cytokines. Remember, we talked about that early on in our chart. NF-kappa B inhibition. And look at what you're preventing then, the reactive oxygen species. In the bottom line, if you can't see that, I'm going to read it to you. I'm not a big slide reader because that gets boring for everybody. But SARS-CoV-2 causes tissue damage by increasing pro-inflammatory cytokines. That's that entire chart. That's that deep fried Twinkie. That's that McDonald's breakfast is making it worse. And reactive oxygen species. Bromelain administration may ameliorate tissue damage by decreasing cytokine levels, as well as reactive oxygen species. This is the pathway of immunity that we're forgetting about. Maybe I shouldn't say forgetting about. Many of you know this and you're doing it. Maybe this is a great refresher for you, because when the people haven't gotten the results they're looking for with what we talked about, the vitamin D, the A, the C, the zinc, we have to look at these pathways and consider these pathways to help them recover better, because they're the people that are eating the top two slides. The McDonald's line, I'm a sales rep, I'm on the road all day. I go past these places. I see the Starbucks line at 3 o'clock. That's not coffee, that's an inflammatory drink of sugar. You know, the breakfast line at McDonald's. Again, I'm not a purist, we all know that. But let's be real, when you see that at Walmart, those frozen Twinkies, that's just horrific. I just wanted to show you these two studies to prove to you, one, another therapy for Intenzyme, but also to prove to you that these large protein molecules actually get across the GI without any problem. This double-blind study investigated the use of enzymes in ankle joint injuries. The enzyme group experienced faster reduction of swelling, faster return to joint mobility, and decreased pain during resting or movement as compared to a placebo group. The time during which patients were unable to work or train was significantly shorter, reduced by some 50% with enzyme therapy. That's massive. So it's getting in and doing job. I have an account in Flagstaff. That's all they buy from me is Intenzyme. He's a chiropractor, treats a lot of car accidents, just Intenzyme. Gives them a loading dose. Here it is again. Orally administered enzymes have very few undesirable side effects. I'll be honest with you. You take too many in a day, you're going to get some loose stool. Okay. I like to take 5 of them in the morning and 5 at bedtime because I've got an empty stomach. Keep the inflammation down. You know, we're all exposed. I will share with this, one of the people high up at Biotics, I was in a booth with him years ago, and he shared with me, he goes, Daniel, I take a handful of Intenzyme every night. That man is never sick. He's never sick. We're breaking down the inflammatory process. But look at this, orally administered enzymes suitable for patients with sciatica due to vertebral disc herniation. The clinical benefit is presumably due to decrease of the inflammatory edema in the nerve root in suitable cases. Clinical results have been spectacularly good. All right, I'm winding up for you, just so you know. Here's your chart again. I just have to refresh it. I'm telling you, if you want this, I've actually had doctors blow it up into a poster size in their offices. but I can email you this piece of paper and you can print it or laminate it or what to show your clients and your patients. All right, just gonna touch base on what we're gonna talk about next time. And the reason I wanted to tell you about this, because we've relaunched these, we couldn't get hemp for a long time. And the next talk is about the hemp CBD industry, because it's a whole wide open industry of Circle K's product to the guy on the corner selling it. It's a huge difference. This is full spectrum. I will explain the difference between CBD, broad spectrum, full spectrum, dosing amounts, therapeutic dosages, all that. Because why? This is why. Quality, the Wild West. Now the FDA has gotten involved. This was a couple years ago. 91% of products do not match packaging. Here's JAMA, 70% do not meet label claim. Okay, so before I share my last slide with you, I want to thank you for your time. And I know, where are we at? We're at 30 minutes. I like it right there for all of us to get back to work. But again, let's refresh on what we're doing and talked about the main components of that chronic viral program. My big two, what I've seen clinical results with lately, as we showed you, were cap arrest and intenzyme. Now, the cap arrest, we talked about 2 to 3 BID twice a day. The intenzyme, you're looking at maybe 3 times a day away from food, or you're using it as a fairly pricey digestive enzyme. You will get results. For the people that are listening that have had challenges with the Epstein-Barrs, the cytomegaloes, please think about the thymus tissue we talked about, okay? And remember, we talked about opting for an injection. Please put them on thymus if they opt in for that a couple weeks before, at least a couple weeks after, and the other products as well, because the adjuvants in those are causing an immune inflammatory reaction. So here we go. For those that are still on, we have a hemp special. The code is hemp22, 10% off, minimum purchase of 6. You can get any, whoops, see, I got fast with my buttons, fast buttons. You can get any of these, oh boy, there we go. Any of these 3, you can mix and match, 10% off. So you don't have to buy just 6 of this. You have the hemp capsule, which is the one I personally enjoy for sleep, knocks you out. And we'll talk about all this next month. There's a nice roll on for pain. And then there's the liquid, which is nicely titratable as well. So let's get to the next, there we go. So Jackie's sitting over here. The first 3 people to send a message in the chat box get 1 sample of their choice. I have samples. She's writing them down right now in the chat box. Yeah, everybody's going, me. I love it. That's awesome. I appreciate the interest in these because they definitely do work. You have a choice of the liquid, capsule, or roll-on. If you just put me, we'll respond to you. Jackie will respond to you with the top 3 names and say, which one do you want? So I have it because I have the samples to ship out to you. All right. And here's the next class. We're going to talk about hemp, purity and potency. It's a wild, wild west out there. And then I will be back from EPIC then, our conference in North Carolina. You see it right here, EPIC 2022. And I'm going to share some of the silver bullets because we have Mark Houston, we have Lindsay Berkson, we have Alex Vasquez, we have Dr. Arlen Hill, brilliant speakers. You know, I learn from these people all the time. And I'm going to hopefully share, for those of you that couldn't make it to North Carolina, some of the silver bullets. So that's on Thursday, May 26th. If you haven't signed up, I'm going to send out this recording to you along with the sign up for the rest of these 3 classes. So you can get prepped. You know you're going to get an email from me with the reminders, so don't worry, but put them on your calendar if you like these. I appreciate your time. What do we got here? Oh, repeat the intenzyme dose. See, God, I love having an assistant because I can't watch all this screen right here. Intenzyme dose for my long haul cases, 5 tablets 3 times a day away from food. I like my dose when I go to bed, and I take 5 in the morning when I wake up. Okay. I'm a chronic sciatica patient. Many of you know I've had nerve damage. I love Intenzyme. But when I have a doctor come up to me who was dealing with the foggy brain forever and nothing was working, and he's a brilliant doctor, and I told him about this, and he saw me at the Environmental Health Symposium in Tucson. He goes, Daniel, works like a charm. My brain is totally clear. Can you take it ulcers or hemolytic anemia? Intenzyme really shouldn't cause an issue. It's not hydrochloric acid. Jade, that would be one to titrate in, well, like at 1 tablet at a time and see how one feels, if it's for you or whoever. Haven't seen irritation from it in all these years. And it was, like I said, the first product I really became familiar with at Biotics. So should be safe. Keep in mind, when you do proteolytics long-term, it does break down fibrinogen, which is good in some cases, but it is a blood thinner. So if people are on blood thinners, you can be aware of that. Here's my info. You have my email, you have my cell phone number, you can text me. Yes, thymus is okay for autoimmune. This is where I get a little slightly challenged because, how do I say this kindly? Some of the professors at a particular school were talking negatively about glandular therapy. I've done a lot of research in this arena. Again, these books I have are amazing, old books on glandular therapy. What do animals go for first when they are carnivores in the wild? They go for the glands. So and I do not see it increasing autoimmune activity. There is the component of the body saying, all right, I've got enough of this thymus tissue. Just somewhat, sometimes I see that too with adrenal tissue. You know, when you're feeding the adrenal gland, you're like, oh, I have enough. I don't need it anymore. There is an adaptogenic component to it. So, Jacqueline, I've got the chat box open here too now. Oh, Sharon, right there. Is that where you're at? Okay. Thank you. De-emulsion forte, gallbladder issues. No, because of the emulsification of vitamin D, you're getting lymphatic uptake. You're not relying on a gallbladder to emulsify that fat. That's what's the beauty of our vitamin D is it's emulsified. You're getting great lymphatic uptake. It's the most medically studied vitamin D in the market. And yeah, not a gallbladder concern. Does Caparest have B propolis in it? It does, yes, but I've not seen an allergic response to it at all. What dose for Caparest, please? 2 to 3 capsules of Caparest twice a day for that long hauler issue. When we looked at the Caparest slide earlier on, I had it at a higher dose at 4 to 5 BID. That was for the active pain case, the sciatica, the injury case. Yeah, it is in my slide. Yeah, so yeah, Barbara, I can follow up with you after that too. Any other questions, concerns? Thank you for all your questions. Wow, you loaded us up good. Intenzyme dose, count me in. So Jacqueline has the samples. We'll follow up with you on what you want of the hemp. Do try the hemp out if you haven't. It's a super potent, super clean. We're going to talk about it next time, why it is so therapeutic to have a full spectrum hemp. Less is more. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time. I'm going to stop the recording. There we go.